The encrypted message arrived through channels so secret that even the CIA didn't know they existed. At 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in November, Donald Trump received a communication that would reshape everything he thought he knew about the war in Ukraine. The sender was Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, but this wasn't another plea for military aid or financial support. This was something far more dangerous. Donald, what I'm about to reveal will explain why this war really started and why it will never end unless we act together. Ukraine isn't just fighting for democracy, we're fighting to control the future of human civilization itself. I need to show you something that will terrify you. The message was impossible for multiple reasons. Zelensky was supposed to be completely focused on defending his country against Russian invasion, coordinating with NATO allies, managing international aid, and leading a nation under siege. His communications were monitored by multiple intelligence agencies from allied nations, analyzed by experts, and scrutinized for any indication of strategic changes or security vulnerabilities. For him to reach out secretly to Trump, bypassing every official channel and security protocol, suggested information so sensitive that even Ukraine's closest allies couldn't be trusted with it. This wasn't about military strategy or diplomatic negotiations, this was about something that transcended the visible conflict and threatened to change the nature of global power itself. Trump stared at the message in his Mar-a-Lago study, trying to process what he was reading. Zelensky had transformed from a comedian into a wartime leader, from an entertainer into a global symbol of resistance against authoritarian aggression. His speeches had moved world leaders, his courage had inspired international support, and his leadership had defied every prediction about how the conflict would unfold. But this message suggested something far more complex, that the war everyone thought they understood was actually about something entirely different. The humanitarian crisis, the territorial disputes, the struggle between democracy and authoritarianism, all of it might be covering a conflict with implications that dwarfed everything the world was focused on. The future of human civilization itself. The phrase carried implications that made Trump's mind race with possibilities. Was this about nuclear weapons? Advanced military technology? Secret research programs? Or something even more significant that could change the balance of global power forever? The proposed meeting location was as mysterious as the message itself, a secure facility in Poland that officially didn't exist, built into an abandoned salt mine that had been converted into something far more sophisticated. No official records, no diplomatic protocols, no intelligence oversight. Just two leaders meeting to discuss something that apparently transcended the visible conflict devastating Eastern Europe. The secrecy itself was alarming. Both leaders were accustomed to having their movements tracked, their communications monitored, their meetings scheduled and documented by dozens of staff members and security officials. The fact that Zelensky was proposing a meeting that would be completely off the books suggested information so sensitive that even their own governments couldn't be trusted with it. The meeting that revealed the greatest secret of the 21st century. 48 hours later, Trump found himself descending hundreds of feet underground into a facility that looked more like a science fiction movie set than a meeting location. The salt mine had been transformed into a high-tech command center with environmental controls that maintained perfect conditions for sensitive equipment and classified discussions. The descent took nearly 10 minutes through shaft elevators that had been retrofitted with security systems and communication equipment that created a sphere of electronic isolation. By the time Trump reached the meeting level, he was completely cut off from the outside world, surrounded by salt rock that provided natural shielding against any form of surveillance or monitoring. Zelensky was waiting in a conference room carved directly from salt rock, its walls lined with monitors showing real-time geological surveys, mining operations, laboratory analysis of substances Trump couldn't identify, and technical specifications that seemed to belong in a research facility rather than a diplomatic meeting space. The Ukrainian president looked older than Trump remembered, his face bearing the weight of war but also something else, the burden of knowledge that went far beyond military strategy or territorial defense. His eyes carried an intensity that spoke of discoveries that had fundamentally changed his understanding of what was at stake in the conflict. "Donald," Zelensky said, his usual dramatic flair replaced by urgent intensity, "thank you for coming. What I'm about to show you will change everything you understand about this war, about technology, about the future of human progress itself." Zelensky activated displays that filled the room with geological maps, chemical compositions, technical specifications, and analysis reports that made Trump's head spin. But as the Ukrainian president began explaining what he was seeing, the implications became clear and terrifying. Ukraine isn't just fighting for our territory, Zelensky explained, his voice carrying a weight that transcended political rhetoric. We're fighting for control of elements that don't officially exist yet, materials that will determine which nations control the next century of technological development. The map showed mining operations throughout Ukraine that had been disguised as agricultural facilities, industrial complexes, research installations, and even military bases. But these weren't ordinary mines extracting coal, iron, gold, or conventional resources. They were precision extraction operations targeting elements so rare and valuable that their discovery had been classified at levels exceeding nuclear weapons research. "Look at this," Zelensky said, pointing to chemical analyses that showed compositions unlike anything in public scientific literature. "We have discovered deposits of elements that exist nowhere else on Earth, materials that make current technology look primitive. But you haven't seen the most shocking discovery yet. The elements had been discovered accidentally during Soviet-era geological surveys but kept secret for decades. When Ukraine gained independence, only a small circle of scientists and government officials knew about the deposits. The discovery had been so significant that it influenced every major political decision Ukraine had made for the past 30 years. These materials," Zelensky continued, showing Trump technical specifications that seemed impossible, "can store energy at densities that make current batteries look like toys. They can conduct electricity with zero resistance at room temperature. They can manipulate electromagnetic fields in ways that could revolutionize everything from communication to transportation to warfare." The elements weren't just valuable for their technological applications, they were the key to technologies that could reshape human civilization itself. Room temperature superconductors that could eliminate energy loss in electrical systems worldwide. Quantum processors that could solve problems in seconds that would take current computers centuries. Materials that could manipulate gravity itself, making space travel as simple as driving a car. "We call them civilization elements," Zelensky explained, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Because whoever controls them will control the future of human development." The applications were staggering and immediate. Clean energy systems that could power entire cities with devices the size of car batteries. Quantum computers that could break every encryption system on Earth while creating unbreakable new forms of security. Transportation systems that could move people and goods anywhere on the planet in minutes rather than hours. Medical applications that could cure diseases by manipulating cellular structures at the quantum level. Agricultural systems that could grow food in any environment by controlling molecular interactions. Even space exploration would be revolutionized by propulsion systems that could reach other star systems in years rather than centuries. "But here's what made me contact you," Zelensky said, showing Trump intelligence reports that made his blood run cold. "Russia didn't invade Ukraine for territorial expansion or political control. They invaded because they discovered what we had buried in our soil. The evidence was overwhelming and documented in captured Russian military communications, strategic planning documents, and interrogations of high-ranking prisoners. The invasion hadn't been planned as a general assault on Ukrainian democracy, it had been designed as a precision operation to seize specific mining locations and research facilities that most of the world didn't know existed. Putin knows about the civilization elements," Zelensky realized, his voice carrying a mixture of anger and fear. "He's not trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, he's trying to control the future of human technology." But Russia wasn't the only nation that had discovered Ukraine's secret. Intelligence intercepts showed that China, the United States, and several European powers had all been conducting covert geological surveys and attempting to establish mining partnerships that would give them access to the revolutionary materials. The war everyone sees on television, Zelensky explained, is just the surface of a much larger conflict. This is really about which civilization will control the next stage of human evolution. What Zelensky discovered will terrify you. The civilization elements weren't distributed randomly throughout Ukraine, they were concentrated in specific locations that had been carefully mapped and studied for decades. The largest deposits existed directly beneath areas that had become the most intense battlegrounds of the war. Look at these coordinates, Zelensky said, showing Trump mining maps overlaid with current military positions. Every major battle, every strategic objective, every important city that Russia has targeted, they're all located directly above civilization element deposits. The correlation was too precise to be coincidental. Russian forces weren't just trying to capture Ukrainian territory, they were conducting a systematic campaign to seize control of mining sites that could make conventional military power obsolete. Mariupol, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk, every city that had seen the most intense fighting sat directly above massive civilization element deposits. The humanitarian tragedy of the war was real, but the strategic objectives were driven by resources that could reshape global power structures. But they're not the only ones, Zelensky continued, showing Trump intelligence reports that revealed the true scope of international interest in Ukrainian resources. We've detected covert operations from multiple countries trying to establish mining rights, research partnerships, or direct extraction agreements. The competition for civilization elements had triggered what intelligence agencies privately called the Invisible War, a conflict conducted through corporate acquisitions, scientific exchanges, diplomatic pressure, and covert operations that made the visible military conflict look simple by comparison. China has been buying Ukrainian agricultural companies that happen to be located above element deposits, Zelensky explained. American tech companies have been funding research partnerships that give them access to our geological data. European energy corporations have been negotiating extraction rights under the guise of post-war reconstruction planning. The corporate interest was massive and coordinated. Companies that appeared completely unrelated were actually working together to gain access to Ukrainian resources. Agricultural businesses provided cover for geological surveys. Technology partnerships created opportunities for research access. Even humanitarian aid organizations were being used to establish presence in areas above civilization element deposits. Every major corporation in the world wants access to these materials, Zelensky realized, but they're all trying to get it through secret agreements that bypass our government's control. But the most disturbing discovery was that some of Ukraine's own officials had been secretly negotiating with foreign powers to sell access to civilization element deposits in exchange for military support, financial aid, or post-war reconstruction contracts. I discovered that members of my own government were planning to trade our future for immediate survival, Zelensky said, his voice carrying profound betrayal. They were willing to give away technology that could benefit all humanity just to win a conventional war. The revelation had forced Zelensky to operate in secret even within his own administration, building a parallel intelligence operation that could protect Ukraine's civilization elements while fighting the visible war that dominated international attention. That's why I contacted you, Zelensky explained. Because you understand what it means to fight against your own establishment when the stakes are high enough. The alliance that could save human progress. Trump absorbed the implications of what Zelensky was revealing.
The war in Ukraine wasn't just about territorial integrity or democratic values, it was about determining which nations would control technologies that could reshape human civilization itself. "What do you need from me?" Trump asked.
"Partnership," Zelensky replied without hesitation. "America has the industrial capacity to develop civilization element applications. Ukraine has the raw materials. Together, we could ensure that these technologies benefit humanity rather than just the nations powerful enough to steal them."
The proposal was unprecedented, a secret alliance between a former American president and a wartime Ukrainian leader to control the development of technology that could make current global power structures obsolete.
"But Donald, if we do this, every major power in the world will try to stop us," Zelensky warned.
"Russia will intensify their invasion. China will increase their economic pressure. Even American intelligence agencies might see this as a threat to established strategic relationships." The plan required careful coordination and perfect secrecy. They would need to extract civilization elements from Ukrainian deposits, transport them to secure American research facilities, and develop applications without alerting the multiple intelligence agencies and corporate interests that were already competing for access. "We start small," Zelensky explained, outlining a strategy that would appear to be conventional business development while actually revolutionizing human technology. Energy storage systems that seem like incremental improvements but are actually quantum leaps. Communication devices that appear to be advanced smartphones but can actually manipulate electromagnetic fields. Transportation improvements that look like better engines but are actually gravity manipulation systems. The strategy was designed to introduce civilization element technologies gradually, preventing the social disruption that would come from sudden technological revolution while building the infrastructure needed for more advanced applications. "The goal," Zelensky said, "isn't just to win the current war. It's to ensure that the technologies we're fighting over are used to improve human civilization rather than dominate it." Trump recognized the potential and the risk. Partnership with Zelensky could give America access to technologies that would maintain its global leadership for centuries. But it would also require opposing other American interests that were already competing for Ukrainian resources through conventional diplomatic and corporate channels. "We'll need to build the research infrastructure without anyone understanding what we're really developing," Trump realized. "That means creating companies, hiring scientists, and establishing facilities that look like conventional technology development but are actually working with materials that don't officially exist." The operation would require resources, expertise, and secrecy on a scale that dwarfed most government programs. They would need to establish manufacturing capabilities, research facilities, and distribution networks while maintaining the illusion that they were developing incremental improvements to existing technology. "Volodymyr, this could either be the greatest opportunity in human history or the most dangerous mistake we've ever made." "Both," Zelensky replied. "But the alternative is letting these technologies be controlled by whoever can take them by force. The revelation that changes everything." 3 months later, the first civilization element applications began appearing in American markets, disguised as incremental improvements to existing technology. Battery systems that lasted 10 times longer than conventional alternatives but were marketed as advanced lithium-ion technology. Communication devices that could transmit data through any interference but were sold as next-generation signal processing. Transportation systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics while appearing to be advanced but conventional engineering. The applications were introduced through companies that appeared unrelated to Ukrainian operations or Trump business interests.
Patents were filed under names that revealed nothing about their true origins. Manufacturing was distributed across multiple facilities to prevent any single organization from understanding the complete technology. But the impact was immediate and transformative. Energy costs dropped dramatically as civilization element batteries eliminated the need for traditional power grid infrastructure.
Communication became instantaneous and uninterruptible as devices could transmit through electromagnetic spectrum ranges that had never been accessible. Transportation efficiency increased exponentially as vehicles could move with minimal energy consumption using principles that conventional physics couldn't explain.
People think they're just buying better phones and longer-lasting car batteries, Trump said during a secure communication with Zelensky 6 months after their alliance began. They have no idea they're using technology that's generations ahead of anything that officially exists. The strategy was working perfectly. Civilization element technologies were transforming American infrastructure and industrial capacity while appearing to be natural technological evolution rather than revolutionary breakthrough. The applications were being introduced through what appeared to be normal market competition. Different companies would release competing products that were actually based on the same civilization element technology but packaged to look like independent innovations. Consumers saw rapid improvement in multiple technology sectors without realizing they were all connected to the same revolutionary discovery. The genius of this approach, Zelensky observed, is that people adapt to gradual change without questioning it. If we had announced quantum computers and gravity manipulation systems, there would have been panic and investigation. But if we introduce them as faster processors and more efficient engines, people just assume it's normal technological progress. But other nations were beginning to notice the improvements and investigate their sources. The response that proves everything. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries detected the unusual technological capabilities appearing in American markets and began tracing their origins. Chinese industrial espionage operations intensified dramatically, with cyber attacks targeting American technology companies with unprecedented sophistication. Russian intelligence services began conducting aggressive surveillance of American research facilities and corporate executives. Even European allies began demanding explanations for technological advances that seemed to violate established scientific principles. They know something has changed, Zelensky reported during an emergency communication with Trump. But they can't figure out how we're doing it or where the technology is coming from. The investigation efforts proved that every major power had been aware of civilization elements and competing for access to them. The sudden appearance of advanced applications in American markets had triggered a technological arms race that made conventional military competition look primitive. China has increased their operations in Ukraine by 400% in the past 3 months, Zelensky continued. Russia has shifted their military strategy to focus entirely on areas where they suspect mining operations. Even our European allies are pressuring us to share whatever breakthrough we've achieved. Chinese corporations had begun buying American technology companies at prices that defied market logic, attempting to reverse engineer civilization element applications. Russian hackers were targeting every major technology firm, searching for any information about advanced materials or revolutionary manufacturing processes. European governments were demanding technology sharing agreements as a condition for continued support of Ukraine. But the most significant response came from within the American establishment. Intelligence agencies began investigating the source of the technological improvements, corporate interests demanded access to the new capabilities, and government officials started questioning whether America was gaining unfair advantages through unauthorized technological development. The hardest part, Trump realized, isn't keeping the technology secret from foreign adversaries. It's protecting it from American interests that want to control it for their own purposes. Traditional American technology companies were demanding access to whatever research had produced the breakthrough applications.
Government agencies wanted to classify the technology for national security purposes. Military contractors were insisting that civilization element capabilities should be restricted to defense applications. The challenge required managing not just international competition for civilization elements, but domestic pressure from institutions that saw the new technologies as threats to established power structures. The choice that will determine humanity's future. 1 year after their secret alliance began, Trump and Zelensky faced a decision that would determine how civilization element technologies would be integrated into human society. The applications they had developed were beginning to transform entire industries, but the pace of change was accelerating beyond their ability to control it. "We can continue introducing the technology gradually," Zelensky explained during their most sensitive strategic meeting, "keeping the true capabilities secret while slowly improving human infrastructure. Or we can reveal what we've discovered and let humanity decide how to use it." The gradual approach would maintain stability while ensuring that civilization element technologies served beneficial purposes. But it would also mean that only a small group of people would understand humanity's true technological potential. The secrecy required to maintain their monopoly was becoming increasingly difficult as other nations intensified their investigation efforts. The revelation approach would democratize access to revolutionary technology but could trigger social disruption, international conflicts, and power struggles that might prevent the technology from being used for human benefit. "There's a third option," Trump said, recognizing implications that went beyond their original alliance. "We could build an international framework that ensures civilization element technologies are developed for human benefit rather than national advantage." The proposal was unprecedented: create a global organization dedicated to managing revolutionary technology in ways that served all humanity rather than just the nations powerful enough to control it. It would mean giving up our exclusive access, Zelensky realized, but it would also prevent the technologies from being used for domination or destruction. The international framework would require unprecedented cooperation between nations that had historically competed for technological advantages. It would mean sharing civilization element resources and research capabilities while establishing oversight mechanisms that ensured the technology served human progress rather than military dominance. "The risk," Trump said, "is that other nations might not be willing to participate in genuine cooperation. They might use the framework to gain access to the technology while secretly developing it for their own purposes." "The bigger risk," Zelensky replied, "is that if we don't create a cooperative framework, the competition for civilization elements will trigger conflicts that make the current war look small by comparison." Standing together in the same Polish salt mine where their alliance had begun, Trump and Zelensky represented something unprecedented: leaders who had gained access to world-changing technology and chosen to share it rather than exploit it for national advantage. Their partnership had proven that revolutionary discoveries could be managed in ways that served human progress rather than just national interests. The civilization elements buried beneath Ukrainian soil hadn't just provided new technology, they had created an opportunity to demonstrate that global cooperation could transcend competition when the stakes were high enough. The most advanced materials in human history had been revealed not through academic research or corporate development, but through the courage of two leaders who understood that some discoveries were too important to be controlled by any single nation. 6 months later, the International Civilization Element Development Organization held its first meeting, with representatives from every major nation gathering to establish frameworks for managing technology that could reshape human society. The organization's headquarters was built directly above the largest civilization element deposit in Ukraine,
serving as a symbol that revolutionary technology should belong to all humanity rather than just those powerful enough to claim it. The war in Ukraine continued, but its meaning had been transformed. Instead of fighting to control civilization elements, nations were learning to cooperate in developing them. The future of human civilization would be determined not by which country could seize the most advanced materials, but by how well humanity could work together to use them wisely. Trump and Zelensky had discovered something more valuable than revolutionary technology: the possibility that human beings could choose cooperation over competition when faced with opportunities that transcended national boundaries. Their alliance had proven that even the most advanced discoveries could be managed in ways that served human progress rather than just national power. The civilization elements would continue transforming technology, but their greatest impact would be demonstrating that humanity could evolve beyond competition when faced with possibilities that benefited everyone.